This is the Bates Bobcast, Summer Edition. On this episode, we remember the life of Coach Bob Flynn, who passed away on July 31st at the age of 83. We will also visit with Director of Athletics Kevin McHugh to get a summer update on Bates Athletics. That's coming up on the Bates Bobcast. On July 31, 2016, Bates Athletics lost a legend when Robert C. Bob Flynn passed away at the age of 83. Throughout his 50 years at Bates, Flynn served first as an assistant football coach, then at various times as head coach of the skiing, baseball, and golf programs. Last October, the new donor-funded Nordic and Alpine skiing rooms were named after Coach Flynn, who back in 1976 brought the NCAA skiing championships to Bates. Director of Athletics Kevin McHugh spoke at the event.
The force, the spirit, the iconic Bobcat Zen, as I call it, through the past 5 decades of Bates skiing has been Coach Bob Flynn.
In July, before Flynn's passing, McHugh had this to say about his legacy.
Bob, the way I look at him is this coach with an exceptional kind of wealth of knowledge in baseball, in skiing, in golf, but he was this sort of the venerable coach that has all this knowledge and experience, has knowledge and life experience, but wrapped in this sort of the kindest, package of almost anybody I've ever known. And because of, I guess, both his experience and his longevity, he's touched so many people that he is iconic. There is, you mentioned Bob Flynn, and he brings a smile to everybody's face, and there's a love for him and for the relationships that he established with people. That's it's pretty unparalleled, I think, and part of it is he had I can't remember specific sayings, but Coach would be famous for dropping these just crazy Flynny kind of sayings, and usually wicked was tied in there somehow or other with it, but that was part of kind of his shtick, if you will, and again, aside from having coached and mentored, starting the skiing programs and just having had such a long line of succession, he's just been this resource and again, this almost kind of quasi-legendary guy that's been on the scene as long as most people can remember.
I think you described it at the dedication of the skiing rooms in the fall as like the Zen of Flynn, right? Elaborate on that.
Yeah. I don't know somewhere that came up, but there is this sort of this Coach Flynn Zen kind of thing because of, and again, you have to be around him to appreciate it. It's not something that's really articulatable, if you will. But again, part of it is his savvy, his knowledge, but it's his way of expressing himself. And again, it's done in like I say, in the kindest, most considerate way. He's one of the nicest men you'll ever have the pleasure to meet. But again, wrapped in that is some real gems of experience and ways that he's been able to help again, countless numbers of kids in 3 different sports.
Even in his final years, Coach Flynn continued to make an impact on Bates student athletes. This past fall, we talked with current men's golf captain Brad Rutkin about his coach.
Well, he's a great athlete. He's a competitor. He knows so much about competing that I think just having him to give advice. He played Double-A baseball, for example. He's been in different competitive environments, and that's really allowed me to develop as an athlete.
A Lewiston native, Coach Flynn was a Bobcat through and through. His daughter, Becky Woods, graduated from Bates in 1989 and is the head coach of the men's and women's Nordic skiing teams, a position she's held since 1994. This fall, Coach Flynn talked about what it was like having his daughter as a colleague.
It's great. She does a wonderful job. She's really a very good coach, and I'm trying to be objective about, my remarks, but she has done a wonderful job here, and she's been here at Bates for a long time as well.
Flynn's years as the baseball coach at Bates also touched many student athletes. In fact, current men's and women's squash head coach Pat Kosker played baseball for Flynn from 1994 through 1997. Kosker joined the Bobcast after Flynn's passing to talk about his coach's legacy. Being from New Jersey, you come up in the summer of 92 to visit Bates, to visit Maine for the first time, and the first person you meet is Coach Flynn. What was the first impression?
Well, I learned a few new words that day. Met Coach Flynn with my parents. We sat down for about 2 or 3 hours, and we spoke about everything maybe besides baseball, which was part of Coach Flynn's thing. We talked about golf and skiing and football and all the other sports that I had played, and just a great meeting. I was convinced that he was the type of man that I wanted to be with for the next 4 years, and my parents were as well. Just a really remarkable person, and I just knew that I wanted to spend more time with him.
Yeah, and then obviously there's a great article right now actually up on the athletics website, athletics.bates.edu, about Coach Flynn and his impact on the institution. He brought the NCAA championships here for skiing, had a big role in that, also coached golf for many years, but you played baseball specifically for him. What did you learn about the game of baseball from Coach Flynn?
Coach was a great tactician and strategist. We learned to play with pride, obviously pride for Bates, but also to have fun with the game. We played hard, and tried to win every game, but the lessons within the game were more important, and that's really what I'll take from it, is the time with the team, the time with Coach, the lessons that he taught us. That's really what I'll take from that experience.
Any individual moments about Coach Flynn stand out to you that you remember specifically to this day?
There are a million. Some of his sayings were legendary, to put it lightly. Dropping the wicked plow. He used the word wicked probably every fourth word. There's still some of those sayings that I take with me now with my teams. But I definitely, one of the quotes that I use a lot is, "He who hesitates is lost," and that was Coach Flynn's way of saying, be young and have fun and go for it, and don't wait for life, just go for it and do your best.
And then, his personality, I know obviously he could be, I know in football at least, as an assistant coach, he could be kind of a taskmaster, but what was he like as a baseball coach? Did he make you guys run a lot or anything?
Coach, we did a lot of batting practice, a lot of scrimmages, a lot of infield. He was a defensive mind for sure. He worked with the pitchers. He knew everything about everything. That's a really simple way of putting it. He knew everything about the game. His own playing experience was really extensive, and he had a batting coach. George Sisler was a batting coach. He was signed by Branch Rickey, and he spoke a lot about those experiences, which was really cool to hear. And a lot of us that played baseball here were historians of the game. Baseball is has a really rich history, and so we learned a lot about the game from Coach Flynn. But as I said, just having fun with the game, having fun with the guys, that was our focus, and trying our best and playing for Bates. That's what we did. We tried our best to win games for Bates and for Coach, and he's a treasure. He's a Bates treasure, and he's still with us all.
Yeah, you mentioned the stories from his playing days. He played minor league baseball in the Pirate system for a number of years. Do you remember any stories specifically about his days playing in minor league baseball, or what he emphasized about baseball from the lessons he learned playing in pro ball?
Well, I know from my own experiences, one of the first conversations we had was some of his discussions with Branch Rickey and talking about his experiences with Jackie Robinson, and that really hit home. And we talked a lot about the sportsman, the gamesmanship of baseball, and playing the hardest that you could, kind of moving forward when things didn't go your way. A lot of baseball is failing, errors and strikeouts, and so again, everything that he talked about, there was a lesson in there, and a lot of the lessons from baseball were about failing and how to overcome those failures in life and move forward and move past those. And so, yeah.
Now, you obviously played for him, but then you came back to Bates as a coach. What was it like to be a colleague of Coach Flynn?
Coach Flynn is like a father to me, and every time I saw him, he'd give me a big hug, and it was just, his smile was infectious, and I'll miss the warmth and the hugs that he used to give me. He's my fan, and he rooted for the squash team just as much as he rooted for the baseball team or the ski teams or any other teams at Bates. He's a real he's a Bates guy, and his family's Bates through and through. And that's what I'll miss. Being his colleague, I don't even, he was my father. I would go by his office, and whenever I saw him, we would talk about life at Bates, and I'll miss those times.
Obviously, this happened over the weekend. When did you find out about him passing away, and what went through your mind when you learned about that?
Well, I've always, everything I do has Coach Flynn, a piece of Coach Flynn with me. Coach loves my wife and my kids, and so I've had him in my thoughts for a long time. But recently, since we've learned that he was sick, it's just been really hard. But as I said, he's with us all in everything we do, and he'll continue to be with us at Bates. A celebration of Bob Flynn's life will take place at 11 a.m. on Saturday, August 6th at the Gomes Chapel. Summer may not have any sporting events on the field for the Bobcats, but Director of Athletics Kevin McHugh has been plenty busy. We caught up with him last month to give us a summer update on Bates athletics. First of all, looking back here on the past school year, what progress did you see Bates make as an athletics department, whether it be on or off the field?
Well, first, on the field kind of stuff, I think we continue to make inroads with Bates being a force in NESCAC. We're not where we necessarily want to be across the board in terms of placing, in the top half of NESCAC, and we're on our way there, and we're getting there. But I think almost in any sport, any opponent does not want to play Bates. I think what we've established is a competitive mode that we have, again, across all of our programs. Certainly, we've gotten more and more talented as we've, really ramped up recruiting, and I think that's continued to improve. And again, I think it showed across the board that again, probably, I know field hockey, playing Bowdoin in the national championship and playing them to, so close. I think that's one of the examples that jumps to mind that I know there's folks that just don't look past us anymore, and that may have been the case in the past, where I think you could kind of take for granted a little bit that that you were going to get a W when you played Bates, and that is not something that people take for granted now. So I think we've improved on that. We've obviously had we've had some facilities improvements that have been significant in the way of accomplishments. Some still under works, but that's been part of what we've done. And again, I think we just continue to pull together as a staff that lends a little bit of something different about the Bates experience. I think it's a combination of the support that we have for our student athletes, for who they are besides what they can do on the field, but I also think it's the support that we have for one another. I think because we are maybe constrained a little bit resource wise versus some of the folks we compete against. That I think leads us to pull together more as a group, as a staff, as an organization, and I think there's a feel to that translates to our student athletes, and I think that makes the experience competing here just a little bit different, and in my view, a little bit better. And with that, we want to continue to have that, but yet end up being more competitive across the board as we keep going.
Of all the sporting events you were able to be at this past year, what was the most fun you had at one? What was one that really stood out to you?
Actually, I would say two stand out. One, and for different reasons. One was I had the good fortune to again go to the swimming and diving NCAA championships. And first of all, it's a as most NCAA championships are, a really distinct, really neat event to be at. But I also spent time there, in the bleachers, sitting with our kids, with our athletes, and so we had men and women competing there, and so to be able to to spend time with them at the championship while they're competing, it was fun, but it was just an experience in a different way of experiencing our athletes and the event at the same time. The other undoubtedly was being part or being on hand to witness parts of Ahmed Khalid winning a second national championship and being around him, the team, the energy, just the whole scenario of everything, the pressure that was on that young man to do it again, never mind the first time do it. I think that was, I know maybe fun's not the right word, but in terms of an exceptional experience and to be part of, those are the two that stand out for me.
And maybe the least fun was when you had to replace a backboard before a basketball game.
Yeah, I was at one point I was going to say it's not the most fun, but the most memorable one. Certainly. Having that and in some ways having thought about that so that we had this spare backboard in place, but then never having actually gone through the process of getting facility guys over and figuring out who's gonna hold the thing up. That was new for me, and adds to my D3 book that I'll write someday, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of encapsulates the Bates spirit of teamwork right there, because you're the athletic director and you're out there picking up glass and everything, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of part of, I just have never felt like, any of us, shouldn't be ready to do something, that anybody else would do, because again, we're all part of the same enterprise. And so, and particularly if, I got my equipment manager there who's got glass falling on his head, and I wouldn't ask somebody to do that, and particularly if I'm not willing to, to sort of be there as well. And as it was, we needed folks and we needed bodies, and I still have a little juice left, and and felt like I could contribute to that effort. But yeah, it did take a whole lot of folks pulling together in on the spot. And again, I think that's we've done that. That's one of the first things I really impressed me back when I started. One of my first couple years, and we hosted the NCAA championships in tennis, and we did it in skiing. And again, we don't have the resources and we don't have the personnel that some other places have. Even my previous institution, we could call on some other folks, and we did it in house with a limited number of groups, and we did it just as well as could be done at any of the other places. And that really has inspired me. It's made me really proud to be a part of the group that we're part of. And again, it lends this sense of something a little bit special about what we do and the folks we do it with.
There were a number of pleasant surprises this year, I thought, for Bates Athletics, but what was one that really stood out to you in terms of maybe a team or a player that surprised you?
Well, yeah, you start off with pleasant. Well, I'll say I think one of the pleasant surprises was Kelsey Ross being named Coach of the Year. I think we all recognize what Kelsey has done, but again, for a team that I think she ended up finishing, they finished fifth in NESCAC, for the recognition of that to happen from her peers. Again, pleasant surprise, but a surprise and a good one. And I think getting over that hump of that recognition. I know we talked about this with Allison a little bit with her first year, in basketball. Wanting to have more recognition of all NESCAC and things like that. And sometimes it takes being in the league a little bit before some of that recognition comes. Some of the other surprises that I wouldn't have been necessarily positive ones. You mentioned one already, the backboard breaking. Right. Even though we had talked about that possibly when it happened, was a shock. I think a little bit of a surprise was how long and how arduous the hosting of the NESCAC tennis championships was. We knew that was going to be work, but the way it turned out and as competitive as it was, and the days that I think you were part of that, and Andy was part of our sports information and our athletic trainers that were here till literally midnight on one of the nights. I think that was a little bit I think got caught off guard. The other sort of, if you will, ugly surprise to me was men's lacrosse not getting into the NCAAs. Again, we knew that was possible. I just, given what we had done our previous year, thought that was going to happen, and was surprised when it didn't.
Yeah, I definitely thought after they'd be in Tufts again that they would get in, but so it goes, maybe a chip on their shoulder for next year, perhaps. So speaking of next year, what are some of the goals for the department in the upcoming year? It can be like administrative goals or team goals, looking at different programs.
Well, again, I'll start with the competitive piece first because that's what we do, and we always have goals to be more competitive. They aren't necessarily more specific than expecting to be more competitive across the board in NESCAC. We should be knocking on the door this year, with playoffs and a lot more sports and advancing beyond those. That means, again, expectations that we have more teams involved in the NCAAs, and that means, we'll hopefully end up, placing higher in the Directors' Cup. And those are all, again, they're somewhat objective measurements, and we don't only look at winning and being competitive as the only thing we do, but at the end of the day, we are keeping score and we are competing, and our goal is to try and keep that trajectory going upwards. Administratively, we had a departmental review this year, and that came back with some input, some comments on some things that we're doing really, really well, and some things that we could do better. And so, one of the things is going to be incorporate the findings from that review and try and figure out how we can incorporate and do some of those things better. I think that's going to involve potentially, some changes, organizationally or structurally, and so, trying to both implement those and at the same time incorporate. So, and I think we're going to talk about this in a minute, but we're also going to have some new folks on board with some positions that are open. And so, here, the way we're set up, that every head coach has a secondary assignment pretty much, and so when you have people leave, reevaluating who's doing what in terms of second assignments, it's sort of a domino effect in that, so some of that's going to shuffle up. So, changing assignments, getting those new folks on board, mentoring them, having them become part of the, the Bates staff and family is one of the things that we're going to do. I think, just figuring out I mentioned the facility improvements we have, so we'll have a new boathouse, we have a new turf field. So again, figuring out, just how operationally we want to make sure, we're incorporating those things. That's also some of the things that we're going to look for next year.
Yeah, you touched on the staff searches, a couple of full-time head coaching openings, including baseball and alpine skiing. And obviously, you want to do these searches as quickly as possible, but also as thoroughly as possible, because you don't want to miss out on any recruiting opportunities and whatnot. So for fans and alums who may not know about the process, how does it work when you are looking for like a new head baseball coach like Bates is right now? Sure.
It's a fairly somewhat standard approach each time. It just is definitely more challenging when you try and do it in the summer. First off, you take a look at your job and you come up with either a refined job description, or you just make sure that in fact what you're searching for is clear to everybody, and then it's a matter of advertising that, of trying to strengthen your pool. In some cases, recruiting. I know oftentimes I'll use connections that I have to just find people that maybe haven't applied that we can ask them to consider being in the pool. And the same thing. That's one of the things that we charge the search. So we create a search committee each time around and ask them to get involved in trying to get us as strong a pool as possible. So the first stage is getting the word out, trying to get the strongest pool possible that you can have, and then it's a matter of convening your search committee to really take some time and be thorough about reviewing the applications that are in there, trying to narrow those down. So obviously you have a bar every time that you're looking at a position. You have a bar for a certain level of competence, coaching wise and teaching wise, that you want to have. But then beyond that, it's and it sounds sometimes a little mushy to say, but the fit. So I talked about what I was talking about, how proud I am of the staff that we work with and the atmosphere that we have. It's making sure that, okay, we've got this level of coaching expertise, but now how do we narrow it down to the person or persons that we think might be the right fit for us? And so, again, that's, we really lean on our search committees that are usually comprised of coaches and staff, and then we generally have a faculty person on board. And then we'll also, so the search committee will narrow down to the number of finalists, and that's not predetermined. It's the ones that we think really rise to the top that we want to bring to campus for a full day of interviews and meeting with folks here, and then we'll involve members of the team. Typically, when we do it during the year, we have the team go out to dinner with each candidate, and and they're able to have a dialogue about everything and anything. In this case, we're probably going to have to try and Skype in because most of the athletes aren't anywhere near where they can come by, but But we'll bring those candidates, both the baseball and the alpine skiing candidates, onto campus, and we'll have them spend a day here. They'll do a public presentation that if any of the athletes are around, certainly that if they can come by and be on hand for those, we'll have them, but as well as our staff and anybody on campus. And then between myself and the committee sitting down and kind of going over what we've discovered, we'll hire 2 new coaches.
And without, maybe saying, going into great detail, is someone with like a NESCAC background normally preferable in these type of searches, or is it someone possibly thinking outside the box who may not even be familiar with NESCAC who might bring new ideas?
I think both. And the committee has to assess that. Yeah. So I think there are some, I guess, some downsides if you have someone that only has NESCAC experience and you want to maybe have a little bit broader. But to be honest, I think we probably lean a little more to someone that has at least that experience or pretty good knowledge of it, because NESCAC is different, and the experience of playing at a NESCAC type of school, balancing the academic rigor with the competitive expectations, it really is important that somebody understand and both know how to work with and coach those athletes, but also how to recruit the right athletes that are going to fit that that particular requirement. So so typically we at least look for or take a look at someone that has some NESCAC experience, but that's not to say that that we're only going to look for or somebody has to have that. There's certainly in this pool, I know there's some strong candidates that have a whole wealth of experience, but not necessarily any of it NESCAC. So we'll look at both of those.
All right, great. And then fall sports, they're going to be here before we know it. I mean, they start early September. We're talking here in late July, and so what are you most looking forward to for the fall season coming up?
Well, right now it's the fall weather. Looking for it to cool down a little bit, but no, I'm really looking forward to to football rebounding. I've had some conversations with Mark and excitement about kids he's got coming back and new kids coming in. I'm really anxious for our first home field hockey game on the new turf. That's going to be exciting. And one of the things I mentioned this earlier, I think, but I'm really looking forward to a few of our coaches in particular, really hitting their stride. So I think Stuart Flaherty, Kelsey Ross, Danny Ryder are, they're in that 3rd, 4th, 5th year where, they've had some really solid recruiting. They've played some people really tight, really close. I mentioned Kelsey last year being recognized. I think those sports in particular are really poised to, to get over the hump. And so, I'm excited about seeing what they're going to do. And just in general, excited about the new crop of first-year athletes that we have coming. It's always exciting when you have a fresh new group of kids coming in and seeing what they can do and what they bring. So, yeah.
All right, Kevin McHugh, thanks so much for the July update here on Bates Athletics. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next time on the Bates Bobcast, we'll start previewing our fall sports as Bates students return to campus. That's coming up later this month on the Bates Bobcast.